So here we go, enhancing communication with human design. So whip out your charts, whip out your loved ones' charts. Let's look at communication, and let's look at communication in the context of charts. The first place where we oftentimes tend to break down in our communication is our failure to communicate with when we don't fail failure to communicate in a way that's right for each type. Manifesting generators and manifestors need to inform. That's part of the strategy for those types, but they also need to be informed. And in just a minute, I'm going to break this out in just a little bit more depth. Remember that the strategy for the manifestors and the manifesting generators is to take stock of who's going to be impacted by their actions and to make sure that they are informing, so that when they inform, people know what to expect. They're not hit by this blast of moving creative energy that can oftentimes be confusing or distracting or even destabilizing if you don't know what's coming. We oftentimes talk about strategy as being something you do according to your type, but we forget sometimes to also remember that strategy actually goes both ways. That not only do manifestors and manifesting generators need to inform, but they also need to be informed. And when they are informed, it actually minimizes the frustration and the anger that they can experience. Generators and projectors need to be asked, invited, or recognized. And in just a minute, I'm going to break that down for you into more specifics, because you want to be mindful of how you ask a projector, because you don't want to kick your projector back into their conditioned sacral response. Nobody by design is designed to be told what to do, even kids, by the way. There are ways to communicate with children that enhance their ability to cooperate with you and not drop them into resistance automatically by telling them what to do. Reflectors need time and freedom to change their perspectives and their views over time, because it's in the process of taking the time to feel their way through whatever it is they need to feel their way through as part of their experience, that they get clarity. And if they don't have the time, if you're putting pressure on your reflector and you're not giving them the freedom to really be in the flow of their own inner timing, then you oftentimes can be pressuring them to make a decision that's not correct. And then they experience the theme of disappointment, which is my segue into our next little section. We need to talk about the emotional theme of the types and how that impacts communication. We don't get excited about the emotional themes on the human design charts. When I do readings for people, or even when people get their free chart with their little report and they see their type and it says on next to the type their emotional theme, and it says things like anger, frustration, bitterness — that's usually the one people really have problems with — or disappointment. They're like, what does this mean? Nobody wants to be considered to be angry or frustrated or bitter or disappointed. And I think a lot of times when we look at the emotional themes in human design, we don't use it as a barometer for alignment with correct behavior and choices. And when I say correct, I mean aligned behavior and choices according to your human design type. And I think that sometimes, especially when we look at the way sometimes human design is taught, that emotional theme can sometimes be used as an excuse. And I've seen this happen before, where sometimes if your theme is anger and you get angry, then instead of going, what's my anger telling me? We say, well, I'm angry because that's my type, or I'm frustrated because that's my type, or I'm bitter because that's my type, or I'm disappointed because that's my type. And we don't listen to the message that the emotional theme is telling us. Sometimes we don't listen to the message that the emotional theme is informing us because if you're the one experiencing it, it's oftentimes hard to check in and hear what yourself is telling yourself. The truth is, when you are in partnership with someone and they understand your human design type and they understand the emotional theme of your type, it's really beautiful when somebody who loves you can see you getting into the emotional theme of your type for them to be able to say, hey, there's this thing going on here with you and your emotional energy. I feel like something's off for you. You're out of alignment a little bit. How can I support you in bringing yourself back into alignment? So, in the next little section of slides, what I'm going to share with you is what does the emotional theme mean when it gets triggered? Because, and again, I'm not judging the emotional theme. I have no judgment against an angry manifestor or an angry manifesting generator or a frustrated generator or a frustrated manifesting generator or a bitter projector or a disappointed reflector. But if we don't also recognize that that experience of the emotional theme is a form of communication, and we don't support the people we love when they're experiencing the pain that sometimes comes with the emotional theme, we're missing an opportunity to serve our partners in a most loving and generous way. So, our first type, and I'm just going to play with the quantum names for you guys. The quantum name of the manifestor is called the Initiator. And if you remember information about the manifestor, you'll know that the manifestor is here to serve an inner nonverbal creative flow. And that when they serve that creative flow and they inform the people who are impacted by their movement or commitment to movement and action based on that creative inspiration and flow, that they not only serve that creative flow, they actually serve the purpose of initiating others through their action. Because the manifestor or the initiator has this internal nonverbal creative flow that has to be served in order for the initiator energy to stay healthy and for them to feel good and for them to feel aligned with their purpose. And it's a big amount of energy. It's a huge surge of energy that doesn't have a lot of transformers or regulators that downgrade it into language. It's pure divine inspiration that they're in the flow of. And they oftentimes, the initiator types have to oftentimes wait for right timing and right circumstances to be able to follow that flow. When the initiator starts on that flow, if in the process of serving that flow and bringing it into form, they get interrupted, maybe they forgot to inform, right? Or maybe somebody who thinks they know better about the process of the initiator decides to give them advice or to ask them if they need help or gets in their way in some way, the initiator type can experience the emotional theme of anger. Anger can be a problematic emotional theme, especially if you're a woman, because in our society, we still don't have a very good way, a very good belief system or collective identity that supports women in experiencing anger. We don't like angry women in our Western society. And so if you are a manifestor who is now experiencing anger, now oftentimes what happens for the manifestor when they experience anger is they're trying to push it down because we're never usually celebrated for experiencing our anger, right? Nobody says, wow, you have the right to be angry, or ooh, that's a good feeling, let it go, come on, let it rip, let's get some anger going here, right? We don't usually get excited about anger. And oftentimes what happens is that the energy gets pushed down and pushed away, and then the manifestor type or the initiator type loses connection with their divine power, their creative potential. I want to invite us into a reframe of the emotional theme of anger and to see it as creative disruption. The manifestor or the initiator type tends to get angry when their creative flow gets disrupted. And it's not because they're angry. In fact, I don't think that's the right word for it. It's that creative spark didn't get to be fulfilled. And it's a nonverbal creative spark that has a certain amount of speed and alignment through action associated with it when the timing is right. And when it gets interrupted, that energy, it's like a lightning bolt, it's got to go somewhere. And so the manifestor type seemingly explodes, right? But they're not really exploding and they're not really angry. They've had their creative flow disrupted. And the part of the challenge is oftentimes when that creative flow gets disrupted, you can't get it back. And that energy has to go out and then back down into the earth, because if it doesn't get moved, it's banging around inside the body of the initiator, and that's not healthy either. So let's start exploring the idea of recognizing that the anger of the manifester isn't I'm angry because I'm a manifester and I can be angry, but rather that a manifester who is experiencing anger is experiencing disrupted creative flow. And that if you love a manifester and they're experiencing anger, for you to step back and hold space and do your best to be supportive in facilitating an environment that allows them to either rediscover their creative flow if that's possible, or to make sure that you are attuned to what they're doing, even if they forget to inform, because they might sometimes, because it's really not natural for the manifestor type to inform. And you get out of their way and don't ask them things like, what are you doing? Or do you need help? Or any of those things we're conditioned to do for each other, especially generator types. If you're in love with a manifestor, let them have their space so that they can serve that creative flow and know that if they didn't inform, that's not personal. It's that they're busy serving that flow. And secondly, if they do respond with anger, recognize that they're not mad at you, they're frustrated because the creative flow got disrupted. The generators who have a life purpose of taking ideas, things that they respond to, and responding to them again and again over time as a way of deepening their mastery. They're here to give form to inspiration through responding to what shows up in their outer reality. If you are a generator, you are here to see what's going on in your life and to follow the things that feel good and right for you. And ultimately, if you keep responding, to transform those things into mastery, things that are beautiful contributions to the world and to the lives of others. The quantum name that I like to give the generator is the alchemist. You're here to transform a response into something that is masterful. The emotional theme for the generator types or the alchemists is frustration. And frustration can be sometimes problematic because when you feel frustrated about something, the first tendency that we have is to quit. I hate this. I'm going to quit. I don't want to do this anymore. It's frustrating. I quit. Right? And when we quit, what happens is we never get the opportunity to keep following through on that momentum to let it reach its state of mastery, its state of excellence, the fulfillment of its expression. If we look at the way in which the generator learns, the learning curve of the generator types have a stair-step learning curve. If you are a generator, it is natural for you to have, when you try something new or you respond to something, for you to have an initial sort of honeymoon period with whatever that thing is. That initial response gives you an upward surge in your mastery, and things happen. It feels good. Things are popping. Things are unfolding. It feels amazing. You're learning a lot. You're getting better. That's the first part of the cycle. It is also natural for generators to then hit a plateau, for them to feel stuck, for them to, at a certain point in their mastery, in a certain point of their transforming their experience into something beautiful, it's natural for them to hit a plateau where nothing seems to be growing, where you don't seem to be getting better, where the opportunities maybe aren't showing up the way they used to, where it feels like you're stalled in your progress. That's a normal part of the generator process. What that stalling out is, or that plateau is not, oh, things have stopped happening, I should bail on this, but rather opportunities for the generator to get ready to gain energy, to restock, restore, replenish reserves, to get ready for the next surge in mastery. Because the masterful path of the generator is like a stair step. It's up, surge, plateau, up, surge, plateau, up, surge, plateau. And the plateaus are vital parts of that creative process. Well, what happens a lot of times with the generator types is they hit that plateau and they go, oh, it's not working, I quit. And then they start over and they have another surge in mastery and then they hit a plateau and then they quit. And they get another surge in mastery and they hit a plateau and they quit. And so they leave behind this sort of start, stop history of sort of getting things started, but never really bringing them to the full fruition. If you love a generator, And they begin the process of feeling frustrated. They're feeling frustrated all over the place. And I'll tell you this, I'm not a generator, but I'm a manifesting generator. So I have this as part of my theme too. I literally have been in a 2-year frustration cycle. It is just starting to shift. But in my home front, in my personal life, I have not been a very pleasant person to live with for the most recent years because I have been stomping around my house quite a bit in my private life with frustration because in my world right now, things have not been moving fast enough, which is kind of the mantra of the manifesting generator, but who is manifesting generator is also a generator type. So I want you guys to know that all generator types feel frustration. And sometimes those frustration cycles can last a while. But those cycles are about building momentum. So when you love your generator and they're feeling frustration, the best thing you can do for them is say, "Hey, I see you're feeling frustrated. Feels like things aren't moving fast enough, right? I get it. So let's talk through what do you need to do? Do you need to quit? Mm-mm. Ah, okay. Do you need to keep going? It's frustrating though, huh? So what do we need to do to move that frustration? Go walk, go swim, go do something physical so you can get back to being present to where you are and gain that momentum back so you can have that next surge in mastery. The thing is, when you hit a plateau, it's actually a good sign. If you're a generator type and you're frustrated and you're really like super frustrated, it's actually a sign that the momentum is building. And if you quit, you don't give yourself the gift of waiting for that next level of breakthrough. So it's good if you have people in your lives who get that about you, who can hold you to staying in that plateau or check in with you to make sure through responding that maybe it's time for you to quit. Sometimes it is time to quit. I'm not saying don't ever quit. Sometimes it is time to quit. But oftentimes for the generator types, we quit too soon and we don't get to have that next breakthrough that leads us to the next level of mastery. Again, remember that when you have a generator in your life and they are feeling frustrated, it's not personal. And sometimes it bleeds out everywhere. I can assure you that this is true, and I am sorry. I wish my family was watching this because I would be apologizing to them yet again to say, I'm sorry. Sometimes it bleeds everywhere. The manifesting generators, who I like to call my time benders. The manifesting generator is just like a generator in that they have to respond, but they also have a certain element of that manifestor initiator energy. So they have that internal nonverbal creative flow like the manifestor types, but the need to respond like the generator types, which basically means they're a generator that responds. And when they have that stair step learning curve, instead of going up one step and then over and sitting on a plateau, they tend to leap over a couple of steps, get up here where they're really out of their league in terms of being prepared and ready, get super frustrated, then oftentimes have to go back and duplicate the steps they skipped, which is also frustrating. And at the same time, they're following this internal nonverbal creative flow and it's not happening fast enough. And so you can get the perfect understanding of what happens sometimes as a natural part of the time bender process. So the emotional theme here is frustration and anger, which is just like with the initiator type creative disruption. You got a manifesting generator moving through a room. They forgot to inform you, get in their way. They're going to freak out at you. And it's not personal. It's that you got in the way of the creative flow. This is the thing that happens in my house. I keep telling my family, please don't stand in the doorway. Please don't stand in the doorways. Please don't stand in the doorways. I'm moving through the house at high speed. And if you're in the doorway and I have to stop and give you a hug, which I feel bad, but sometimes it's like, I can't hug you right now. I'm in the middle of my creative flow. I'll come back and hug you in a minute, right? Get out of the doorways. That's the same thing is true for the dogs. I'm always telling the dogs, get out of the doorway because I'm moving fast, right? When I get interrupted, when the manifesting generator gets interrupted, the response is that frustration and sometimes that anger, that's mix of creative disruption and momentum. And oftentimes what happens is the manifesting generator feels alone or disconnected from source if they can't remember, oh, hey, I need to inform as well as respond. And people are not moving fast enough. And so you feel sort of like all alone in your creative cycle. Love your manifesting generators. They might be, but they also feel frustrated. The projectors. In the quantum human design system, we call the projector the orchestrator. The projector has the role of managing and guiding and directing others and gets placed through recognition and invitation with the right people who value what they have to say and who support them in sharing their wisdom and their knowledge, because it's through the transmission of their wisdom and knowledge that the orchestrator gives the people that they are here to manage the information they need to minimize frustration, anger, to support and facilitate the gathering of momentum, the fulfillment of creative potential, and the expansion of mastery in the world. That is the role of the orchestrator. The emotional theme for the orchestrator, though, is bitterness. And bitterness can sometimes be, I think, in a lot of ways, one of the more problematic emotional themes, because one of the things that happens with bitterness, and this is actually, I think, quite beautiful if you understand it, is that bitterness is actually an energy that can be repelling rather than compelling. When we bump into a bitter projector and they start exploring their bitterness out loud, that energy can oftentimes push you away from the projector, which is obviously the opposite of what the projector is really wanting. The reason why bitterness is repelling instead of compelling is that a projector who is bitter is telling you unconsciously two things. Number one, they are saying to you, I'm tired. I don't have the energy that everybody else has. I don't have the energy to pretend to be a generator or a manifester and go out in my life and surge and create and do things the way other people do. And I don't have the energy to even engage in the dialogue that we want to have right now. Number two, the projector is saying one other thing. They are oftentimes saying, I don't value myself enough to go home and take care of myself. Or I'm struggling with my sense of value in the world because I don't create like the rest of the types do. I don't create in the way society has been conditioning me to create. And in the way in which society has been teaching me, I have learned somewhere along the way that it's not okay for me to be how I am. If your projector love is bitter, they are unconsciously asking you to help them with their energy, to remind them that it's okay, that they are precious and valuable enough to rest, and that in fact, the world needs them to rest, because rested, restored, replenished, renourished, restocked, rejuvenated projectors have tremendous value to give the world. Depleted and exhausted projectors are still inherently valuable. They're valuable because they exist, but they oftentimes need a reminder that it's okay to rest, that it's okay to restore their energy first before they go back out into the world and create. So pay attention when your projector loves talk to you, and when they begin sometimes talking through the tone or through the emotional voice of bitterness. Stay attuned to that, because that energy, even though it can be repelling, is actually a call to you as someone who can see the bigger picture, who loves a projector, that this projector might need extra support, that that projector might need extra love, a little extra reminding about take a rest, take a pause. And maybe part of what needs to be explored in the dynamic of the relationship is, how does the resource management need to shift so that the projector gets access to the resources they need to be able to restore their energy, so that they can come back and contribute the nature of the brilliance and the gift that they have to bring to the world. Our last types are reflectors, who have a role in the world to reflect back to the collective how we're doing on our path of evolution. It's through the mirror of the reflector that we see the health of our community, the wellness of our community, this level of alignment of our community. It's through that reflection that we have the opportunity collectively to calibrate ourselves. If we see our reflector is not happy, then we need to look at what's going on with us collectively that's creating environment that's keeping the reflector reflecting back to us unhappiness. As such, the reflector is our calibrator type. We need our reflectors to facilitate for us calibrating where we are on our alignment with our evolution collectively. The emotional theme of the reflector is disappointment. If you go back and you remember that the reflector chart is got all 9 centers undefined or white or open, and that anything in your chart that is white or open has the potential to amplify energy. And you think about this reflector with this 9 centers open being able to amplify 9 different archetypal themes in their open centers, and through that amplification to become deeply wise about how that energy works. When we think about the reflector from that point of view, we see that a reflector is a being who is wearing an energy suit that has the capacity to deeply see, know, experience, and feel the full potential of the human condition. And as such, they're here to reflect what they're seeing in the current reality through the lens of their knowingness of that potential. And that knowingness about that potential can sometimes be disappointing. It's hard when you can see what is truly possible for humanity and you look at what humanity is currently doing to maybe not be disappointed. So, recognizing if you love a reflector, that sometimes that disappointment is not personal, but rather a disappointment in humanity that comes from the ability to innately see the full potential of the human condition. And that, secondly, on a more personal level, because the reflector decision making process takes time, sometimes a lot of time, because a reflector, when they need to make a choice, they have to tease through all these different options, all these different energies, and the changeable experience of their own energy based on the movement of the moon. That if they're not given the freedom and the support and the love to take the time they need to make a good choice, sometimes from the pressure of the need to make a choice quickly, they make a choice that isn't good for them. And then they're forced to either deal with the consequences of that choice or they have to back out and find a different opportunity for themselves. And that can also lead to the experience of disappointment. Imagine that you wanted something in your life and you wanted it to show up in a certain way, and you got maybe an opportunity to create it. You saw the potential of the opportunity to create it, but it wasn't exactly the right opportunity, but you didn't have enough time to really feel your way into whether that was the right opportunity or not. And it got threatened. Maybe there was pressure to make a decision quickly and you leapt into it against maybe your better knowingness, but you did it anyway because our society moves way faster than you do. And now you're forced to deal with the consequences of this choice that you made, and you're disappointed because you wanted something else. You had a picture of something different, something better, but you didn't have the time to really feel your way into whether that was correct or not. So when our reflector loves are disappointed, we need to a talk to them about it must be really hard to know the full potential of humanity and to feel the pain of the world. How can I love you better while you experience this? And number two, we need to do our best to diligently encourage our reflector loves to take their time or to craft an environment that supports them in giving them the time that they need to make good and strong choices.